welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to talk about indigenous science and technology in the Philippines, to be reported by yours truly, Danilo Flores. And this is for our GE7 subject. So introduction to the course. This lesson focuses on indigenous science and technology in the Philippines. Filipinos, especially during the early times, tried to invent tools that will help them in everyday life. They also develop alternative ideas in explaining various phenomena and explaining the world around them. This system is this system of knowledge is called indigenous knowledge, which is the foundation of indigenous science. But first, when we what can you say about indigenous when you hear the word indigenous? Right. So when you say indigenous, these are the raw materials, right, or the native um, stuff. When we talk about indigenous, we are referring to the original or native inhabitants of particular region or land. So when you combine it to science, indigenous science refers to the knowledge and practices developed by native people over generation. It is based on their observations, explanations, and understanding of natural world or of the natural world. All right. Indigenous knowledge system is embedded in the daily life experiences of young children as they grow up. Children live and grow in a society where the members of community prominently practice indigenous knowledge. This or their parents and other older folks serve as their first teachers, and their method of teaching are very effective in transmitting cultural knowledge in their minds. So our first teachers for indigenous knowledges, right, or knowledge is our ancestors, or the older folks in our village, our parents. They pass down the knowledge that they also got from their parents. So the lesson they learned are intimately interwoven with their culture and the environment. These lessons comprise of good values. On this, of course, every knowledge that they get is equivalent to a good values, right? So it is a lesson that should be treasured by everyone. So some examples of indigenous knowledge that are taught and practiced by indigenous people are: first we have predicting weather conditions and seasons using knowledge in observing animals, behavior, and celestial bodies. So I can't find the picture, so I just put that one. So indigenous people observe animals' behavior in the sky to guess when it will rain or the season will change. They also know when to plant and harvest crops, right? So, of course, are you going to plant a tree during a rainy season? All right, it will be flooded. Of course, you have to plant a tree during um summer, I think. Not sure. All right, as long as the season is okay, then it is the best time for you to plant. And our indigenous people are able to, um, foresee those by observing the environment, observing the behavior of the animals, and of course, our celestial bodies. That includes the sky. Next one that we have is using herbal medicine. Instead of going to a doctor, ins- excuse me. So hindi po kulam 'yan. That is tobacco, I think, or some leaves wrapped in some vines, and then they are firing it up. Maybe the smoke could help them heal. So instead of going to a doctor, they use plants to make medicine for sickness. They learned which plants help with different health problems. Of course, they've tried every plant before actually recommending it to someone, right? So they use herbal medicines. Until now, we still use herbal medicines here, especially in province, right? So instead of you seeing a doctor, you could just pick up some herbs on your backyard and that will do. The next thing you know, you're already feeling better. And then next one is preserving foods. So this is very common here in the Philippines and actually around the world. Indigenous folks have ways to keep food fresh for a long time, like dyeing meat or fermenting vegetables. These help them have food even when it's not growing season. Right. So preserving a food or preserving foods are actually helpful for you to stock your resources. So instead of this meat is spoiling overnight, right? This meat can still last up to a week or even a month. One good example is the itag. If you're familiar with itag, that is what we used to eat in Baguio. Because if you don't know, I'm actually from, or I have roots of Igorot, and itag is a very, very popular food in Baguio. Next one, classifying. Next one, we have classifying. Uh, next one, we have classifying. Of course, next one we have classifying plants and animals into families and groups based on cultural properties. So they group plants and animals based on how they use them and when they mean to or what they mean to the culture. For example, they might have a special name for a plant used in ceremonies. So here, I don't really have an example, but of course, each animals is being classified here example each animal is being classified on their specific location, right? Or just for example, tarsiers can only be seen in Bohol, right? But I think that overexposure of these animals, say for example you built a resort in Bohol, would make them in danger because overexposure means they are going to be distracted or from their natural habitats. Next one that we have is preserving and selecting good seeds for planting. So when they find a good plant with good seed, they will save them to grow more plants later. This way, they have reliable crops every year. This is what my grandfather used to do, or still doing, I think. So they would preserve a seed of okra, something like that, and some other seeds, right, for them to be able to have it on their own backyard. And that actually helped me grow as well since I am eating plants from their backyard, which is a product of seed preservation. So I think this is one of the practices that should be passed down to every generation. And it is actually very cost efficient. Next one, using indigenous technology in their daily life. So they make tools and gadgets using materials from their environment like wood or clay. So these tools would help them with daily tasks like cooking or building. So here we have a picture of a wagon, right? So if you're familiar with a wagon or um, here before we have like what we call kalesa, I think. Kalesa, and that is also an indigenous material. But if you are looking for more indigenous material, we have like for cooking, I mean, we have like palayok and stuff and spatulas made from woods, right? So they are recycling the materials for them to be able to build their own technology for their daily lives. Next, building local irrigation system. So to water their crops, they create systems to move water from rivers or stream to their fields. This helps them grow foods in dry areas. So yes, I'm correct. So um you can plant a tree or a plant or a crops in summer and then by using irrigation systems, you would be able to water your plant. Because in rainy seasons, you cannot control the sun, right? But in summer, you can control the water since you have this irrigation system. Next one is classifying different types of soil for planting based on cultural properties. So here they know which soil is good for planting different crops. They might use words from their language to describe soils. So here we have, I think the most common soil that we use is the black soil. I'm not sure. All I know is there's a specific soil to use whenever you want to grow your crops perfectly. Because you can't just use any type of soil or earth. Next is producing wines and juices from tropical fruits. So they make drinks from fruits they grow, like grapes or oranges. These drinks can be for celebrations or everyday enjoyment. Right. So here we have lambanog, rice wines, wines itself, right? Fruit wines. So they are used for celebrations, and if you're manginginom, then it's for your everyday enjoyment. Lastly, we have keeping the custom of growing plants and vegetables in the yard. Many indigenous families have gardens in their yards where they grow their own food. It's a tradition passed down through generations and help them stay connected to their culture and land. Yes, so as I was saying a while ago, this is actually a very helpful tradition since, so let's just say you have a knowledge of growing your own plant into your backyards, right? Then you wouldn't have much problem with what food to eat. You could just go there in your backyard and then pick some vegetables and you're good to go. So it should be passed down through generations. Indigenous science, according to Griven 2001 or M. Kappa 2004, CBC 2004, they said that it is part of the indigenous knowledge system practiced by different groups of people in early civilizations. Right? Yes, because it is actually practiced during the early civilizations or during the early civilizations for them to survive as well. And based on Palawan 2005, it includes complex arrays of knowledge, expertise, practices, and representations that guide human societies in their innumerable interactions with the natural milieu, agriculture, medicine, naming and explaining natural phenomena, and strategies for coping with changing environments. So, having this knowledge is actually a complex one, or dealing with different types, or you actually get this knowledge by dealing with different types of experiences, practices, and interactions with your own natural environment as well. So, indigenous science, according to Kajet 2004, it includes everything from metaphysics to philosophy and various practical technologies practiced by indigenous people, both past and the present. Right. It is being practiced from both past and present, since it's a knowledge that should be passed down, since it is actually helping human beings cope up and survive their daily lives, right? So according to Lacarino 2003, elaborated this idea by explaining that science is a part of culture and how science is done largely depends on the cultural practices of the people, right? So it actually depends on the cultural practices of the people. So you can really see that when you go to different places, right? We have a different culture here in Pangasinan. They have a different culture in Pampanga, in Cebu, right? So but the main idea there is this culture is being practiced everywhere in the world. Not just here in the Philippines, but everywhere in the world. All right, so indigenous beliefs also develop desirable values that are relevant or consistent to a specific attitudes as identified by Johnston 2000, namely motivating attitudes, cooperating attitudes, practical attitudes, reflective attitudes. So here in motivating attitudes, indigenous beliefs often encourage curiosity and interest in learning new things, right? So indigenous practices motivates you to um, do things and learn new things as well. This is like what scientists feel, or this is like what scientists feel when they're excited to discover new something, right? Yes, I actually feel that as well. I am motivated to do things if especially I'm interested with what I'm doing or what I'm experimenting or learning. Next is cooperating attitude. Indigenous cultures often emphasize working together and helping each other. Scientists also collaborate with others to solve problems and make discoveries. So, through indigenous discoveries or knowledge, you would be able to cooperate with different type of people for you to, do your work better or easier. So if you're trying to do a research of this kind, right, then you have to collaborate with someone for you to get the answer that you are trying to get. Next, practical attitudes. Indigenous beliefs often focus on finding practical solutions to every problems. Similarly, scientists aims to find practical solutions to real-world issues through their research and discoveries. All right, so here on practical attitudes, of course, you are finding practical solutions to every problems, right? That would make your life easier. This is also the main purpose of the research that we're doing, right? So you actually have to research of something or research, you actually have to do a research for something for your questions to be answered and for your life to be easier. Reflective attitudes. Reflective attitudes. So here, indigenous cultures often value thinking deeply through or deeply about things and considering different perspectives. This is similar to how scientists reflect on their findings and think critically about their work. So one of the values of indigenous materials, one of the values of indigenous beliefs is the reflective. It will make you think of the things that you are trying to achieve, and it would help you out with your daily life. Reflective attitudes. Reflective attitudes. So here, in indigenous cultures often value thinking deeply about things and considering different perspectives. This is similar to how scientists reflect on their findings and think critically about their work. Of course, here's the reflection part. Every work on everything that you do, you actually have to reflect, right? For you to be able to think deeper and critically with the thing that you're trying to do. By the year 2006, Palawan developed an easy to understand framework for indigenous science. As a result, traditional knowledge utilizing a specific method skills and informed by cultural norms and community values makes up indigenous science. So it is being divided into three categories. So indigenous science by uses, guided by community cultures and values, composed of traditional knowledge. So I forgot to place it on my PPT, but here are some further explanation with this indigenous science categorized into three things. First is the uses of science or science process skills. Indigenous science uses science process skills such as observing, comparing, classifying, measuring, problem solving, interfering, communicating, and predicting. Next, indigenous science is guided by culture and community values such as following. So here I'll put that on the PPT. The land is our source of life. It is a precious gift from our creator. The earth is revered as Mother Earth. It is the origin of our identity as people. All living and non-living things are interconnected and interdependent with each other. Next, human beings are steward or trustee of the land and other natural resources. They have a responsibility to preserve it. Lastly, nature is a friend to human beings. It needs respect and proper care. So all of these are self-explanatory, and it is the reason why it should be guided by community cultures and values. Lastly, indigenous science is composed of traditional knowledge. So indigenous science is composed of traditional knowledge, practiced and valued by people and communities such as ethnobiology, ethnomedicine, indigenous farming methods, and folk astronomy. UNESCO's Declaration on Science and the Use of Specific Knowledge, 1999, recognized indigenous science as a historical and valuable contribution to science and technology. So it says that indigenous science is important in development of science and technology in the Philippines. Like the ancient civilization, indigenous science gave birth to development of science and technology as a field and a discipline. So here's what I said. Indigenous science gave birth to the development of science and technology as a field and as a discipline. Indigenous science helped the people in understanding the natural environment and in coping with everyday life. And it's and is important in the development of science and technology in the Philippines. So this is where it all started, indigenous science. It paved a way for us to be able to explore more about what we're having now or getting now. So lastly, to summarize, this lesson discussed the concept of indigenous knowledge and its influence to the development of the indigenous science. The communities in the Philippines have maintained vast amount of indigenous knowledge, cultural practices, traditions, and beliefs. This includes beliefs and practices ranging from different areas such as health, environment, peace peace and order, agriculture, food production, astronomy, music, and literature. And that's it. Congratulations for making this far. If you really listen to my report, draw um, a cat paw print and send it to me via PM on Facebook, and you will be having additional 5 points on your quiz. Thank you so much for listening to my report. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to send me a PM or DM me. Do whatever you want as long as it's relevant to my topic. Once again, this is yours truly, Danilo Flores, and that's my report for Indigenous Science.
Sa tuwing nakikita kong magkasama na tayo, naiinis ako't nasisira ang araw ko. At di ko alam bakit ba nagkakaganto. Sadyang nasasaktan kahit di rin naman tayo. Ang puso ko'y Hi, Assalamualaikum! Shoutout po kay Miss Orhana, ang original Moro singer na kumanta ng awiting ito at sa gumawa ng instrumental na si DJ Charles. Pag-like po ang kanilang page. Thank you!